we go. It must have been some sort of, it had to record James leaving. So now the meeting is officially recorded. Sorry about that, folks.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Revere High School Building Committee project meeting number 14. Today is July 15th, 2021, and the time is 5:38 p.m. Linda, would you like to take a roll call of the members?
I will do that right now. So we're going to start with Mike Picardi.
I am present.
Yes, my technical difficulties allowed you to join in between. I do not see Mayor Arrigo. And Stacy is absent. Susan.
Here.
And Dr. Kelly.
Here.
And Carl Svensson.
Here.
Dr. Perella.
Yeah.
There you are. Jennifer Hayes. I apologize, Jen. I see you saying hi, you were here, but I couldn't hear you.
Can you hear me now? Am I good?
Yes, there you are.
I'm here. Okay. Cool.
Excellent. Thank you. Rich Biscay.
Here.
And I don't see Don Sharamella. So I'm going to note him as absent. Nick Rystrom is absent, and Jerry Visconti.
Here.
Excellent. And Patrick Keefe, I also do not see. Okay. We will start off with following our agenda to vote to approve the July 1st meeting minutes.
Did someone want to make a motion to approve the meeting minutes? I cannot as the vice chair.
So moved. Second.
Okay. Second, and we will do a roll call for Mike Picardi.
Yes.
And Susan Gravelisi.
Here. Yes.
Dr. Kelly.
Yes.
Thank you. Carl Svensson.
Yeah.
Thank you. And Dr. Perella.
Yes.
Thank you. Jennifer Hayes.
Yes.
Rich Biscay.
Yes.
And Jerry Visconti.
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And I will then kick it over to you, Brian.
Sounds good. Let me get the screen shared here. Does everyone see that on the screen? Did that come up?
Yes.
Great. Thank you. So the agenda for tonight, we just really have two items to talk about. Three here, review of PDP submission questions and follow-up. Doesn't really have any visuals. We did get the preliminary design program submission into MSBA. They acknowledged receipt. And initially there's, they always send an initial email back just with, yes, we received it. And they owe us their review questions, which will be coming, I believe, by mid next week. I believe there's like 10 business days or something that they say they'll get that to us. And then we have X amount of time to get responses back to them. So we will be getting a review of the PDP submission, and between us and Perkins Eastman, we'll coordinate responses. A lot of those responses are stuff that we might go through Dr. Kelly, some other folks for, and we plan to give you and go through all the questions that they had really quick and what responses were sent back to them at the next meeting. So we don't have the comprehensive questions yet. We just have a few initial comments of stuff we told them in the PDP submission would follow, including the minutes you just approved. So one of the requirements of that submission is approved meeting minutes for all PDP business. So the initial comment we got back is send us tonight's minutes when they're real. And I also have a site subcommittee meeting scheduled for Monday to approve the 10 or 11 meeting minutes from that phase. They have the drafts as a formality. They want the final meeting minutes. So right now we just owe meeting minutes. Once the questions all show up, we will owe them responses to those questions as well.
Excuse me, I had a question,
Sure.
Brian. In the email communication that Linda had sent out on July 9th, they also said they were waiting for the local action and approval certificate letter. I'm not exactly sure what that is, so I just wanted to ask.
Good point. I forgot to mention it. That's a hard copy of all the certified meeting minutes from the building committee with a cover letter that they call the local actions cover letter. The scans of all that went in 2 Fridays ago, was it, I believe? And the same day I put the original package in the mail to them. So I'm going to call them tomorrow to see if they've got the original package. But that's the only piece of that submission they always want hard copy. And down to the meeting minutes are stamped from the town clerk. So they know these are all the real official meeting minutes. So it in the mail, hopefully they have it by now. They haven't acknowledged receipt, but that was the only other piece.
Thank you.
Just to add to that, Brian, also there was an actual letter that we had sent to them. It was not the original, so they wanted the one that had the actual signatures, which Dr. Kelly later sent over via email as well. So all their signatures and questions have been answered from the initial communication.
Great.
And it might be worth mentioning that they had received the original of that signature page a long time ago. And there was a change in which MSBA staff member was overseeing this project. And so we just had to refer them back to the previous person who was overseeing to get that paperwork.
Excellent. I do think it's worth, left field will just quickly touch base. I do want to know if they've received the originals of the local actions letter as well. So we'll touch base with them. The next, if there are no more questions, let me just take a look around. Doesn't seem like anyone. Item 4, we wanted to just spend maybe sort of 10 minutes going through a look ahead for the coming months, basically the preferred schematic report, PSR phase. So you'll hear us say PSR a lot. That's now the phase we're in. So when we say PSR, it's the next few months. And I have another few slides here to just sort of click through that show you what we want to cover here. But starting on the general, I just wanted to really get those red stars over in October on everyone's radar. That this is the time frame now that, at least if we're holding our current schedule, that we are looking to go from the 5 options we have down to 1. And when we do select that one out in October, right now it's that 10/14 date, and then 10/27 we submit it to MSBA, we, the project, are then tied to that option. There's no going back. So the decisions that need to be made in the next 3 months are the big ones. Namely, where are we building it? So there is a lot of work to do. We're gonna hold these 2 meetings a month. We might end up needing some extras as we get into September. We'll see how it goes, but we wanted to walk you through a month by month look ahead of what our goals are here and what we'll be asking of you at each of these meetings. The stars represent building committee meetings. The blue stars are building committee meetings. The green stars are community meetings. So to walk through this for a second, feel free anybody to jump in with a question. Yep.
It's me again.
Go right ahead.
Obviously, the October 14th date is, an important date because it's our final decision. I am actually going to be out of town that date, and I am requesting if, as a committee, we could move it up to the 21st. I will obviously, if that's not possible, I could Zoom in and, hope that I have internet connectivity from where I am. But it's just when I noticed it earlier when I was going over it, I thought I would ask if that's possible as a committee.
Sure. And so that whole week, the week of, I know it's blocked. So what is that? The week of the 11th?
Yeah,
Yep. Okay. We can push and pull these meetings however you see fit. The 10/27 is the key date. The 10/27 cues us up to follow up MSBA meetings and their board of directors. So we could move that meeting now. We could have the rest of the committee sort of look at your calendars and make sure you can get to these meetings, especially the October ones. But wherever works for the committee we can make work for us.
Okay, so if that works for everyone, I will respectfully request that change. And we'll go from there. Thank you.
Can I suggest that maybe we have a meeting earlier in the week of the 21st of October so that Left Field and Perkins Eastman have the time they need between whatever feedback they get at that meeting and the actual submission on the 27th? And maybe to relieve a little burden on folks, we could do one meeting like on the Monday or the Tuesday, rather than also have a building committee meeting on the 21st, if that's possible.
That'd work.
On the Tuesday, the 19th, Diane, we have a school committee meeting.
Of course.
I mean, I know Monday's an odd day, but Monday would probably be preferred from our perspective. If we could go through a final round of stuff Monday, get questions. We have a couple days to come back and clarify things before we do a vote.
Monday's good with me as well.
Okay. And maybe when we do the minutes for this meeting, we can emphasize the importance of those meetings so that when everybody receives the minutes, they have that notification. And I can also send a follow-up email to the committee members re-emphasizing that.
Good idea.
Thank you.
Excellent. I'm going to roll into a month by month. Anybody has questions, just yell them right out. July, we're obviously halfway through July. And I know the Perkins Eastman team has been working hard advancing all those test fits. You heard the word test fit a lot during the previous phase, and those are all evolving into what are more going to look and feel like individual designs for each site, unique designs. The team's putting a lot of work into that stuff, and ultimately at the meeting in 2 weeks, Perkins Eastman's going to lead you through the evolution from ed programming into the PDP test fits into what they're looking like now. That's going to repeat itself basically almost every meeting we have between now and the and those dates out in October. We're going to keep running through progress, and you're going to see these ideas evolve a little bit. They're going to evolve based on things we, the team, learn. They're going to evolve based on your input. But we want to get them in front of you early so we can solicit opinions and start digging below the surface. More busy work in July is to respond to those pending MSBA comments. We will follow up to make sure all this meeting minute stuff we talked about and those original letters got there, but it is typical that they issue pretty detailed, to be honest, questions on these submittals, and we have a defined amount of time to respond. We, the project team, the consultants, will engage a lot of people, namely through Dr. Kelly. If there's questions, like these questions might be procedural on what did we submit and what's it mean. They might be about goals and ideas. So we'll be involving the appropriate people to help us respond to any questions that aren't just sort of simple procedural consultant questions about why you laid out a schedule this way or why you put a price on something that way. We'll also, we are also continuing to work with the city to develop the housing relocation ideas. I was unable to make a meeting this Monday, but we're going to have set Monday meetings with the mayor, Bob O'Brien, tech, some of the folks from City Hall, and it's moving forward. I don't think I have a significant update ready for tonight, but probably in concert with the next meeting and the first meeting in August, we'll start looking at some real plans for that. In the meantime, I know there's been, the city has started some outreach to really officially deal with this idea with the Housing Authority Board and everything, but it's going to take another handful of weeks to move that forward and know what we're looking at. The other homework item that we're going to follow up with Dr. Kelly and the school folks is just understand the concept of reuse of the existing building, either as a middle or something else. A few of your options have this building being demolished, namely the Ad Renos and new on Aracola Park. And a few of your options, Wonderland and Housing Authority, leave this building able to be, leave the existing building able to be maintained or reused or mothballed. So we just want to help investigate that a little more because we think it's an important item. And when you're comparing and contrasting options, to understand what the benefit or what the loss is for that building, including what costs might be and who might use it, et cetera. We think it's part of the story that needs to be told if one of the options if one of the options is selected that maintains that building. We think the story needs to be told about why and how it's going to be used. So we're going to follow up with Dr. Kelly and her team, and it's something that we'll have incorporated into future presentations, just so the committee understands that, and you can factor it in how each of you want to factor it in as you're thinking about these options. So the meeting today, July 15th, we already sort of talked PDP phase look ahead. We are talking PDP phase follow-up. PSR phase look ahead is what we're doing now. We also have a couple of goals that we'll come back to after I fly through these calendars. We want to, at this meeting tonight, set a contact point for sustainability and mechanical items. I'm going to strongly suggest Carl as the contact point for mechanical. And our desire is to sort of do this without the myriad of discussions we need to talk sustainability and mechanical being posted meetings that we have to work around schedules. We would prefer to have the committee knight a single committee person as the contact person for both of these items. Doesn't have to be the same person, it can be a different person. And the secondary action is for anyone else on the committee who wants to be involved in those discussions to raise their hand and let us know. We will then work through the single point of contact for sustainability and mechanical to develop goals for sustainability, which relate to the mechanical design of the building, and also talk nuts and bolts on what kind of things the school wants and doesn't want, what kind of questions you need answered from our consultants on the mechanical design of the building. So that works very well with this process, and it sort of allows people from the committee to be involved, but it allows us to not have to really worry about scheduling meetings. No decisions get made by these groups. It's all just, there's probably 10, 12 hours of discussions we need to have with some folks to get some presentations in front of you to describe the mechanical aspects of this building and to hone in sustainability. So we'll come back to that a little later. We'll also probably finish off the meeting with deciding on a little list. We have a list of schools to try to set up visits to this summer before school's back in session, hopefully. These are the ones listed here: Billerica Memorial High, Essex Tech, Somerville High, and Durfee up in Fall River are a smattering of projects that Left Field and Perkins Eastman have worked on, and we have ideas of why we'd like to show you these buildings. We're also interested in if there's programs that you folks have heard or buildings that you've heard, and we'll try to make some connections. But if it's okay, I'd like to keep blasting through the schedule stuff, and then we're going to come back to those two items and cement them, and that'll be the end of the meeting. So just quick run forward. This should only take a minute or two. The July 29th building committee meeting in 2 weeks. We will have the MSBA comments and responses done. We'll go through all of them. You'll get a comprehensive update on all the options. Again, moving beyond test fits, seeing some site plans, et cetera. We will bring back to this group sort of a summary of what keeping the existing building means, and the benefits, the potential costs, how it could be used, et cetera. And we will talk about a final schedule for community outreach in the following months. General goals in August: continue working the options and schedules for the options, continue working with the city to develop housing relocation schedules, cost responsibilities, et cetera. And also do a lot of that homework I was talking about with the sustainability contact person and group to start really honing in on sustainability and mechanical system goals. Those will have to be a handful of meetings, emails, back and forths to really just get over the hump to the point that we can summarize it at a committee level. And again, you folks make all the decisions. We just need people to help us, point us in the right direction, do some homework with us, and we can bring all the decision points back to this group. So this group makes all the decisions. And at some point in August, we will be doing some type of community outreach, community design update meeting. We'll talk more about that as noted in 2 weeks to set a real schedule for that. We'd prefer to show you folks the updated options at the meeting in 2 weeks, and then sort of see your feelings on that and see when we should schedule some public meetings. 2 building committee meetings in August. We want to, again, review options. You're just going to see that at every meeting. The first meeting in August, we will present 2 items that a lot of you might find pretty boring. A few of you might be intrigued by them. One is this: how are we going to procure a contractor? Is it going to be construction manager at risk, which is Chapter 149A of Mass General Law, or design, bid, build, DBB, Chapter 149, sort of the old school method of procurement. We'll have a pretty lengthy presentation about a comparison between those two, and we'll be asking you all to sort of absorb that, come back with questions, and on the 26th, be ready to make a decision on whether we're going CMR or DBB. That, if we are going CMR, at that point, that allows us to start working on an application to the Inspector General's office to get permission to follow through with construction management at risk, which takes a number of months, and that would set us up for this winter potentially to start the process of getting a contractor on board. And I know construction's a long way away, but if you look at the bottom of the screen here, our goal is to have a contracting team on board during schematic design. So that's that next rectangle next to this PSR rectangle that we're in right now. You will pick the option at the end of October. We will proceed right into SD, but there's sort of a month or two leading up to this MSBA board decision on 12/15 where they endorse the project. We don't wait for them. This is typical. They don't mind. We move right into SD with the preferred option. There's a lot of work to be done to take these ideas that we're going to deal with and then start really turning them into a design that we can start estimating. So really by that MSBA board vote 12/15, somewhere in winter, we'd like to be putting the ads out and getting some contractors here. So they would then be on board for schematic design to do estimates, to do technical document reviews, to start talking about logistics. How are we going to build on the site that we choose? You know, where a trailer is going to go, how are we going to handle parking, safety, all that good stuff. And so then that contractor is queued up to build the building, and they've been involved for a while. We also, at that point, going back to August 12th meeting here, are going to present the basic options for mechanical systems, approaches, types. That's going to be something that Dan brings you through in a lot of detail, and some of Dan's engineers. That will be the result of a lot of that homework that I was telling you that we're going to work with a point person and whomever else wants to be involved this month and early next month. The late August meeting, more options update, as I noted, decision on whether we're going CMR or design, bid, build. And we'll also, from all the homework that has been done for sustainability, Perkins Eastman can sort of bring you through some goals and concepts on sustainability. September, we need to continue with everything, basically. September is work, work, work. More options, keep working the housing relocation, cost and schedules. I think that's going to go right up to the end here. We're going to probably have some point where that idea on housing relocation is resolved as it can be for now. And as we get into September, that's when we're all going to be sort of looking at each other to decide if we all feel and you all feel that that plan is really coming together. But really, September is going to be a working month for all of us. There is, at some point, some more community outreach in there with the design update. Early September meeting on the 9th, options update. We also are going to have Perkins Eastman walk you through a more sort of aesthetic centric, design concepts, materials, approaches. What's the building look like? Is it super modern? Is it super traditional? Is it a combination, et cetera? So that's something that Dawn and Bob and her team will really bring you through. And I mean, keep in mind, you're picking an option out in October, but the option isn't fully designed. Certainly from the perspective of the real look of the building, the massing and the shape can mostly be set during this phase, but this whole schematic design process that runs all the way out into next summer is when the building is really going to come together. So we think in September, going through the sort of aesthetic approach is pretty much the right time. It gives us time to incorporate that into pricing efforts that are also going to be ongoing in the middle and end of September here. And by the end of September meeting, we hope that this ongoing options update is pretty full of info. Schedules are updated, costs are starting to come together, but really in October, this first meeting in October and potentially the second meeting in October that we're going to move to that Monday is when we'll have all the I's dotted and T's crossed with pricing. So October becomes decision-making month. We have to have our best foot forward for a real plan for housing relocation then. That plan that at this point is going to go in with this report, and if it's the chosen option, I can promise you MSBA is going to scrutinize that plan, and they're going to want to make sure that that is a real plan that has real momentum, because again, if we pick that option, we are tied to that option. And if something falls apart based on that housing relocation plan, the project's going to be basically dead in the water. So we need to make sure that this plan is really coming together by October. And by the middle of October, those few meetings we discussed earlier, we're going to want to get together and rank all these options and then pick the option. We will, in the weeks leading up to this and the meetings leading up to this, also revisit how to score them. Maybe we do it the same, maybe we use different categories, maybe we do it in a different way altogether. We don't necessarily even have to use in sort of a matrix of numerical scoring. We ultimately could go some other route. So in the meetings leading up to this, we'll bring you through how do you want to make the final decision. And by the time we get to these meetings, whatever you guys want to do is what we'll do. So breaking down the individual meetings, you'll really start seeing the cost data come together at the meeting on the 7th. The 14th meeting that's going to jump into the next week is when we will be looking to vote, and then we need a follow-up meeting to submit the PSR. So I think this month will massage a little bit based on our discussions tonight, and it might evolve a little on exactly what's being presented when, but basically the decisions are being made in October. That's the main thing we wanted everybody to sort of realize here.
And Brian, if I may, it's Dawn. The October 27th milestone, that's on us in left field, Perkins Eastman in left field. That's not an actual meeting. That is when we deliver the PSR report to the MSBA. So just for clarity, that's not an actual meeting. The last meeting in October would be the 21st if it remains that day. Yep. So I didn't want any confusion. I'm realizing as I'm looking at this that when I helped out with the graphics, that could be confused as a meeting. That's really just us delivering the report.
You just got a little happy with the stars there.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's a lot of meetings.
So, and I think that this is the meeting that in one way I'm going to say it can't move. What I mean by that is if this meeting moves, we cannot make this MSBA board meeting. So if something comes up, it's not to say we can't extend the PSR phase, but missing this meeting will mean we miss the board meeting, and it puts us back, could be between 1 and 2 months, because this meeting hits a cycle of MSBA review. We have to go to what's called a facilities assessment subcommittee meeting, which is hopefully by then an in-person meeting where a number of folks from the building committee come. The team comes, we present what we've done, we present the options, and they rapid fire a whole bunch of live questions at us. And the FAS subcommittee, the MSBA Facilities Assessment Subcommittee, then makes a recommendation to the MSBA board, who then formally approves it on the 15th. Generally speaking, if you clear the FAS subcommittee meeting, you will clear the board meeting. So this meeting on the 27th, if it's moved, is more of a slipping this whole schedule out, which if there becomes a valid reason to do that, we can do that. but we are working towards making this meeting. I just want everyone to understand that if at some point you folks are voicing opinions that you feel like we need more time, what we'll be looking at is pushing back to a later cycle.
And if I can just try to clarify for a minute, because I think that, Brian, what you just said is contradictory to what Dawn was saying, which is that the 27th is not actually a meeting. It's a deadline, right?
Yeah,
So we want to make sure.
It's the deadline for us to submit it.
Me too, Diane. So thank you. Yes, the 27th is the deadline. The meeting is the 21st, but we would know ahead of that if we weren't going to get to the 27th for whatever reason.
Sorry about that.
Right, and then just what we talked about earlier was combining what's shown in the graphic as meetings on October 14th and 21st into one meeting that would be on Monday, the 18th.
Yep.
Okay.
We're fine with that. So that, I mean,
Great.
that meeting basically could end up at any point during this week. And we just need a couple of days to pull it all together and submit it. So apologies, I was sort of talking about this like it's a meeting. Apologies for that confusion.
It's hard, Brian, when you're doing all this stuff at once.
It's the stars. It's Dawn's fault. Sorry, Dawn. I'm just kidding.
I'll take the blame. No, it's good. I'll take the blame.
Okay. So it's yeah, the submission date is the key. If we don't make the submission date, everything moves back a bit. If we're doing it purposefully, not the end of the world, but we certainly don't want it to be because we just haven't finished something. So we're going to be pushing to get everything finished. So I'm going to back up to tonight. So are there any general questions on schedule and how we're going to get through the next number of months?
Yeah, Brian, I have a question. So you talked a lot about trying to figure out the housing authority and how you could get site control there if that were the chosen option to be presented to the MSBA. But you didn't mention further investigation on some of the other sites where site control is not yet a sure thing. They may be involved eminent domain, they may involve a commercial sale. So I assume that's going to be further investigated as opposed to we put that to rest.
You're right. And really it's for the Wonderland option. Some busy work we'll be doing in July and August is outreach to the owners of that parcel to find out is there any chance we're talking a negotiated purchase. If not, we're going to be basically letting them know that if this gets selected as the option, you're going to see eminent domain notices on X, Y, and Z date. And we'll have those dates in the schedule, Joe, but there definitely is Wonderland outreach through the mayor and some other folks to determine, are we going to do this the easy way or the hard way, and have that ready to go? Because if that option's selected, we need to then run that play. And the housing authority is all about housing relocation. The existing options at this point do not involve eminent domain, but we are going to discuss whether there's benefit on the Aracola Park option of eminent domain for additional site space. So if that becomes a thing as well, it'll be the same as Wonderland. We'll have it baked into the schedule, and if that option with eminent domain gets selected, people will already have a menu of, we're going to be filing notices on X, Y, and Z dates, and it's happening at that point. Because if we pick any option with eminent domain, we're gonna then, as I said, run the play. We're gonna have a time frame that we have to get notices out and start that process, and we're gonna start that process. So that's all stuff that will be baked into the schedules as we see these bi-weekly options updates.
And is there any question with MSBA if they get a selected site and it includes eminent domain, or they're used to that and that's fine?
Eminent domain, I think they're pretty much used to. I think housing relocation, I expect a lot of questions, and I'm interested to see the MSBA comments on the PDP, the report we gave them 2 Fridays ago, because I expect them to really start poking at that. I expect them to say this is a little different with housing relocation. It involves a totally separate project succeeding, and I expect them to tell us what they want to see in the next at the next submission. Now, if they don't, we're still going to do the legwork we have to do, but I anticipate getting some comments back from MSBA on if you're going to choose this option, it's got to be real and you got to demonstrate it to us. Eminent domain, I think they're used to.
Okay, thanks.
Brian, maybe you can, this is similar to that question, maybe just additional clarification. So I understand the process of eminent domain in any of the other locations, and it sounds like that it's a pretty clear cut, complicated, but it's a process that we can engage in. Regarding the housing authority, do we have the authority to eminently domain that area, or is it because of its federal, my understanding is federal funding connections?
It wouldn't be eminent domain. It would technically, I'm sort of trying to not use the word eminent domain for housing authority because I don't believe that would be the legal action we'd be doing. The city needs to provide a new home to the folks that they have a responsibility to have down there. So that's what I mean by there's a housing relocation project as opposed to eminent domain. The city needs to fund that project, permit that project, build that project, move the people in, and then we've got an empty housing project that we have site control over. So it would not be eminent domain. Folks wouldn't be going through that process. They wouldn't be getting eminent domain notices. They'd be getting notices from the city, theoretically, if this option is what goes down. They'd be getting notices from the city that you're going to be moved someday. You're going to be moved into new housing. It's going to be here. And so not eminent domain, housing relocation for that option.
And just one more follow-up question. Does this committee, like, it just strikes me as peculiar that do we have the capacity or power to make that decision? Isn't that something that the city would have to do on their end? Or does this committee, can we make that decision?
This committee cannot make that decision. The city, this project need to successfully work with the city to make that a reality. This project doesn't have the authority or the budget to create a housing project. We need the city to create it, knowing that it might go away in October if it's not the preferred option. So that's sort of why I state there's going to be some point in August, September where if that plan hasn't come together enough, we're probably all going to have some decisions on this committee about what are the repercussions of that. If we don't have a real defined road, it's going to be hard for this committee to really treat that like a real option. So we definitely need the city to lead the way. We're going to help out, and I think that starts with official outreach to the housing authority and really getting this plan done. Because you're right, John, this building committee does not have the authority to launch that project or do that project.
And I'll just add that, you know, there are a separate set of meetings that Brian's having with city officials to discuss that process and building that road. And the mayor is part of that team. That's the group that Brian referenced earlier that he's meeting with on Monday and has met with 7 or 8 times already. Tech Lang and Bob O'Brien are on that team, and they're looking at exactly what is needed in order to make that a viable option from the city side.
And something that we talked about, I think towards the tail end of our last meetings when we were picking options, has sort of taken hold in those meetings. And it's really that we presented 2 very different schedules to you for the housing authority, the bigger options having a much longer pause. And we think we're going to be able to make a bit of a hybrid schedule. And this is how we're going to approach it. And the city's given us sort of the thumbs up that they like this idea. But the idea is going to be to basically approach one planning option at the housing authority, figure out where the building's got to go, and figure out how much room we need to build that building and open it up with parking and with circulation. They think, at least based on what we know, that displaces about 150 houses. That keeps us on the faster schedule, the housing authority small schedule, which is about 1.5 years, 2 years, where the city needs to make that housing. It allows us to get in there and build. And the second wave of another housing project and another housing relocation could happen in the 2 to 3 years that we're building that building. And by the time that building opens up, we might have the ability to have a phase 2 to add fields. So that's going to be the approach for the housing authority. It's going to be one option that can scale bigger. And the first go would be how to get a building there that's self-sustaining with parking, with access that we can open, because the city feels they can replace that much housing in a year and a half, 2 years. If we were saying replace twice that housing in one go, they need 4 years. So we think we could get a shovel in the ground, get this school getting built. All those the folks that were displaced would already be in a new home, obviously, and there'd be a 3-year period where we were building, where a second housing relocation wave can happen that then allows us to add fields. So that obviously would mean the new school opens without on-site fields at first, but we would have theoretically a second phase set up where another 150 houses get relocated to new housing, and we then knock them down and build fields.
Are there meeting minutes to these housing authority discussions?
There are not currently. I mean, I've been keeping notes from them, but they're not public meetings, and they're not recorded and do not have minutes so far. I think I'm going to suggest that we start some memo or something that tracks what we're talking about and what our assumptions are that comes out of that, because I need to start turning that process into some data, some output, because again, we need to infuse that into the next report. If in fact this is the chosen option, we need to describe exactly how this is going to go and who made the decisions and who's going to do it. So I think you got a point there, Joe. I think we got to start getting some on the record info out of those meetings.
Well, they may or may not want to have those discussions on the record. So I mean, I'm not.
I know what you mean.
That's up to them. You know, I don't know how many members of the committee are interested. I'd be very interested, because I've done some affordable housing, to understand at a slightly more detailed level of what the thinking is and how the assumptions are made. Not to question that the people doing it aren't experts at it, but it would give me some comfort just to understand, okay, here's what they're thinking, you know, how it can be done in that time frame, et cetera. My one other question is, you know, some of the sites, there may be funding that's not coming out of the project budget. That was discussed at one point in time. I don't think it's been determined one way or another. In terms of MSBA, when you submit this PSR, what are they looking for in terms of how it's going to be funded? Or that comes later with the town vote, and you could sort out at that point what's in the project, what the city's going to do? How does that work in terms of the PSR?
That's a good detail. The PSR has to fully answer that question, Joe. So Rich Viscay has been working hard and got us a nice looking draft of what the MSBA calls a capital budget statement. That's a requirement of that PSR submission out in October, November. That document and that section of that report basically needs to reference our preferred options budget. And we're going to be showing you budgets. And once we pick one, instead of having a range of the cheapest one to the most expensive one, we're going to plug in that real number. That document needs to lay out how the city is going to fund this, exactly how the city is going to fund this. And they need to compare it to their debt service, their debt capability, all that good stuff. That's something that Rich is really leading up. He got us a draft earlier today. We're all going to be reading through that. And that's more info that will be presented in the coming months as sort of a matter of course on. It really relates to is there going to be a debt override vote or not? We all think the answer to that looks to be no, which is great. The city can budget for this without a debt override, a public debt override vote. And otherwise, that PSR submission, the MSBA won't buy into it if we can't demonstrate that the city's able to fund 100% of what needs to be funded. And I believe if that option includes housing relocation, it's going to have to include the value of that housing relocation, even though it's not part of our project or budget. They need to know that the city can do it and can afford it.
Okay, yep, thanks.
And Brian, since the Housing Authority is federal, has there been any conversation regarding the fact that if there's a delay in the approval on the federal level, that it could potentially delay the October 27th deadline?
It could, but so far we're trying to stay off all the federal units. So
Okay.
we need confirmation that because we don't touch the federal units, we're not sucked into a federal process. But if
Okay.
we suddenly find there's a federal process, that could be a landmine issue for this. Right now, we're trying to avoid the federal units. What we've shown you avoids the federal units. They're mostly on the west side of the site. And
Okay, so the small one is not federal. Okay, perfect.
yeah,
Thank
we're gonna
you.
try to stay out of the Fed's jurisdiction there, just to avoid the process.
Okay.
And if I can just say, I know there are so many questions about this site in particular because it's so complicated. I have confidence that when the team has good information to share with us, they're going to do that. The meetings that they've had to date, and it's really just been Brian Dakin and the mayor, have been focused on what would be the steps in order to get the approvals, and do we feel confident that the city can even take those steps? So they're really in a very preliminary phase of that discussion. I feel like the meeting they're going to have next week is going to push that thinking a lot further. And the other folks that I mentioned, like Tech Lang and Bob O'Brien, for those who don't know, they're employees of the city. Tech is the city planner, and Bob O'Brien is actually a retired employee of the city who has some good knowledge base in this area, which is why the mayor has asked him to be part of that conversation.
Yeah, that's a really helpful group. They know what they're doing. They know the city. They know the master plan. They're sort of responsible for that master plan, from as I understand it. Tech did a ton of work in that. So it is a very helpful group to chat with. And there's been some little side info that have come out of that. Like, for example, I've found out about some crosswalk signalization and crosswalk improvement down between Ericola Park and across Route 60 to the hotel that's coming at some point. So we're going to incorporate the understanding of what's happening there into thinking about Wonderland and thinking about Ericola Park. But just being in touch with these folks has allowed them to sort of give us a heads up that there's some work the city's going to be doing in and around these, namely a signalized crosswalk to get kids more safely across Route 60, which helps us and allows us to really try to flush out that how would we then continue that path all the way over to Wonderland, which is something that we've all talked about studying as part of Wonderland. How do we get a safer pedestrian connection between those two sites?
Yeah. And I mean, I don't know if everybody on the call saw the public announcement that came out from the mayor's office and from Catherine Clark's office about the extension of the commuter rail to build a new platform, which is going to be incorporated in some way on the Wonderland site. So there's like all of these different nuances that will play themselves out in the coming months are going to absolutely impact the decision making about where this building is going to go.
Yeah, that's a good heads up. Even that I meant to actually, Dan, call you and just let you know that some info on something that's going down at Wonderland with that train station is coming through. And I think you folks from a planning and layout perspective will be really interested in how that lays out. I'm sure you'll want to mull that over internally, talk to Warner Larson, the landscape designer and stuff, because the city definitely has some goals over there. And I think our project and that project could completely happily coexist. We just need to plan around the info they give us. Let's see if there aren't any other scheduled questions. Quickly on school visits, email me, call me if you have any other ideas of schools. I won't really get into, maybe at the next meeting we'll tell you why we think some of these. You might see some suburban schools here that you think, like even Billerica, what's Billerica High have to do with us? But there's some specific parallels that we think we could help make, whether it's where the building is and where it fits, or programs that are in the building you might want to see. It's also just good to get out and see some of these newer buildings and see some buildings that your architects worked on, see some buildings that we've managed, and just get some ideas. Usually we can get the principals of those buildings or the superintendents to tag along and ask questions. But if there's other programs you'd like to see, that's great. A lot of these, we have examples here that are building, right in the backyard of the old school. We have examples of ROTC applications. We have some, wet lab type things in some of these buildings that might overlap with the marine biology idea for this project. So there's a lot of reasons why we think this is a good hit list. If there's any others that you folks wanted to add, let me know, and our team will start organizing maybe when this stuff can happen.
Brian, can I just ask if any of these schools are as large as the anticipated Revere High School will be?
Lynn Stapleton, if I think you're on. I think Durfee and Somerville are bigger. I think.
Durfee's 501,300 and something square feet, and Somerville is 414,000 and some odd square feet.
How does that relate to, like, can you give us that in student enrollment if you by any chance have that metric?
Durfee is 25,070 students, and Waltham is a little bit lower than that, maybe 23,000 square feet. I mean, students, sorry.
Students, okay.
25,
about closer than I
17,
thought.
22, yeah.
So just about the same for those two. Billerica is smaller. I think Billerica is only 1,250 students, and I think Essex Tech's a little smaller.
Essex Tech 337,000 square feet. It has, I think, Bob, 1,900 students or 1,500.
Yeah, 1440, less students, but more
1440.
special spaces, yeah.
But it has the special spaces you're looking to see.
These are probably 4 of the 6 or 7 bigger MSBA projects in the last number of years, and we were trying to stick with bigger because it brings its own thing. The size of these buildings brings its own dimension to the design here.
Yeah. And I mean, certainly we'll discuss this more at our next meeting, which is great, but I would just put the idea out there that, you know, for us to go see an Essex Tech where they have a sprawling campus and a large building relative to a much smaller number of students, and we already know that we're space constrained, it might be just a little bit of a tease.
I get you.
We could blindfold you until you get inside the building.
Yeah.
Yeah, there might be. I think we'll get that's sort of a little bit why I wanted to almost turn this into a little bullet point of this is what we thought would be good to see at Billerica. This is what we think is good at Essex. And then Dr. Kelly, you can even maybe other folks can look at that and sort of be like, yeah, we agree. No, that's not a good use of our time. So there are some specific comparisons. A few of these at least do illustrate that you can fit a big building in some spots where you don't necessarily think you can fit a big building. And even though they're out in the suburbs, you know, we still didn't have the option on some of these jobs of expanding our site out. We just had to deal with what we had. So we'll follow up on that. If anyone has any other school ideas, let us know. The last point we wanted to cover tonight is to see if we could get a point person assigned for sustainability and a point person for mechanical. I don't know, Dan, if you, Dan, Dawn, your team, if you want to just sort of expand a little bit on these topics and, you know, what we need from these folks, what sort of things we're going to be talking about. Maybe that'll help assign some people, but I will say I think Carl is the right guy to assign for the mechanical contact.
From the mechanical standpoint, we basically want someone to, you know, help be the intermediary between the committee and us about the mechanical systems that we're going to be investigating for the new building. So that would be someone who's knowledgeable in those kinds of systems, has experience with them, and you know, multiple different kinds of systems, and would be able or willing to, you know, sit with our engineering teams and discuss those things. And it's kind of interlinked with sustainability, but I think we'd rather have someone else be the head of the sustainability, because that's really about the city's, what are the city's goals as far as sustainability for the project. And, you know, and those goals, those aren't just energy goals, they're all the goals. You know, there are, what kind of goals do we have for material health? What kind of goals do we have for renewables? What kind of goals do we have for saving water, or, you know, using the building as a teaching tool? So there's a whole bunch of different kinds of things that will interweave into the sustainability part of it. So it's not just about mechanical, it's really a much bigger topic.
And I'm just wondering, if would be best to have somebody who does work for the city or one of the city councilors who would have greater insight into what the city's working on in that area to be that point person.
That would be fine. I mean, we generally see that there are people out there. There are people who are very interested in each one of the communities we work in. That they're extremely interested in sustainability, and they're the ones who end up being that point for that particular topic.
And I also just want to stress, like, we assign a point person, but then if you're interested in, as a committee person, being involved, raise your hand and we'll have you involved. It's really that, if it's Carl for mechanical, it's and there's a few other people that want to be involved with that, we'll organize it through Carl and let the other people know they can attend meetings, they can speak, they can ask questions. It just, the key is that we just route it through one person. And I'm not even positive we need a motion on this. I think it's more just an agreement on who the people are that we can start bothering on these topics and set up some meetings and discussions.
I'm going to ask Rich and Jerry if they can think of somebody on the city side who might be good to do the sustainability piece.
I think that we're working right now with a collaborative effort between Chelsea, Winthrop, and Revere on a sustainability contact through MAPC. So I could do a little research on that. I don't know if that's a regional person can do it or not, but we're regionalizing that sustainability study through MAPC.
Are you attached to that work, Rich? Like, would you want to be our point person then?
If I need to be, yeah, sustainability is not my strong suit, but happy to. I think maybe through tech and planning is really where the proper channel would probably be, and I'm happy to make that connection.
Yeah, I was thinking tech as well, and I do think it would just be good to have someone through this committee just be called like the bridge, and I don't think we need to rely on that person to do the heavy lifting. But I think that would be nice, and I was sort of thinking that tech and their group might be the ones to really involve in this.
If you need me to be the conduit to the committee, I'm happy to do it, and I'll work through tech. And if we need to modify that, we can do it accordingly.
Thanks, Rich.
Jerry, what do you think?
I agree. Yeah.
Okay.
Rich, if you don't mind being that would be that's fine by me.
No, I'll do it, and then it may quickly change once I bring tech in and get a little more insight. But I actually just met the people that were our liaisons through MAPC yesterday, and now maybe they're going to be involved with that, I'd imagine. But I'll in the meanwhile I'll be the pastor.
Great, appreciate that.
And Kyle, did you accept the nomination to be the liaison for mechanical?
I nominate Kyle.
Yes, I will accept that.
Good. Yeah. Yeah, and Carl, I know that's right up your alley with your skill set. You know these buildings, you know what works, you know what doesn't work. I know you got a lot on your plate, but this is going to be a big one. There's a lot of money put into these mechanical systems. They're very complex, as you know, and making sure we get them right with you and whomever else you think should be there, I think is important for the project.
Right. I think between myself, my team, and even some of the experts in the DPW field and throughout the city, even some of the, even tech on her own with her skills is going to kind of combine with the people on our team throughout the city would be a well-rounded team. I think besides the mechanical, I think there's a strong aspect on the physical plant itself, even the physical layout of where these spaces go in conjunction to parking and the outside use and the outside community spaces that are going to be brought into it. So I think there's a lot teamwork that's going to be involved. I know in the current building, we have certain facilities that are really great spaces, but probably in the wrong location and probably not thought through, or maybe just thought through with a different mindset at the time the building was built. I know we just had, a really big function in our auditorium, and I watched a lot of people try to struggle to get their way and navigate through the building. The parking's miles away, and they got to basically navigate through the high school to get into this giant space that holds a lot of people. And it just doesn't make sense that you would have that type of facility with such a disconnect from the outside world. So I think there's a combination of, the locations of what's going to be where, even the outside spaces that we use, what do they back up to? Like right now we have some amazing courtyards in the high school, but they back up to English classes and history classes, and they're just not functionable to be used because of the distraction they would create being used. So I think there's a lot that's going to go into what goes where, as well as the actual components that go into the building as far as mechanical, heating, electrical, and things like that. So I think we got to build a strong team around it. I'd be happy to front it, but I think I'm going to need a lot of help from the experts, and I think we have those experts in our city.
Yep, appreciate that, Carl. Agree 100%. Tech's ears must be ringing. She doesn't know it's coming. She's getting mentioned on both of these, so she's got homework coming.
That's what she gets for being so amazing. That's the punishment.
Yep, that's what happens, and that's good. I'll take it any day. We need a lot of people that, as you just said, I mean, there's going to be a lot of people over the next few years that get really involved with this, and we're going to need that to really give you the building that the city deserves. So that's all we had to cover for tonight. Let me just make 100% sure. I'm going to go back to the agenda. That was item 4. If no one else has any comments, we could open it up for public comment. I don't see anyone. I don't hear anyone.
We had somebody online earlier today, but I think he dropped off. So I don't think we have anybody else to offer public comment as of right now.
Sounds good. We have our just sort of item 6, anything new? Does anyone have anything new to put on the table, items for the next meeting, etc.? If not, we could go to a vote to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right. We will do a quick roll call then for Mike Picardi.
Yes.
And Susan Gravelisi.
Yes.
Dr. Kelly.
Yes.
Carl Svensson.
Yes.
Dr. Perella.
Yes.
Jennifer Hayes.
Yes.
Rich Viscay.
Rich is muted. I don't know.
Sorry, yes.
Thank you. And Jerry Visconti.
Yes.
Excellent. With that, we are going to adjourn the meeting. Thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful rest of your evening.
Thanks, everybody.
Bob Bell, do you have 1 minute?